If you're having coffee with me, I'd welcome you to my tingle of words. Make yourself at home and pour yourself a beverage of your choice. Did you catch the wolf moon? Legend has it that it was named such because of the packs of wolves heard howling outside the villages amid the cold and deep snows of winter, usually around January. Well, I don't know about all that. What I do know is, according to our traditional meteorological knowledge passed through our oral tradition, it does not rain, at least not heavily, during full moon days. Perhaps this might explain why there's been a bit of a dry spell. According to the weather report, the reason is that there was an intense tropical storm in the Indian Ocean drawing moisture from the ITCZ, which was supposed to be bringing rains to our region of the continent. Why the geography lesson, you might ask? Well, it's to explain the sunny and rather warm weather we're experiencing, which is more suitable for cold beverage than a piping hot cup of tea. If you're having coffee with me, I would introduce you to Chibuku Super, a beer based on a traditional beverage made from fermented sorghum and maize. I used to think it was exclusive to Zimbabwe, but I've since learned that it has continental ties. Chibuku International Beer. Internet research suggests that Chibuku has been available in at least 8 African countries that include Botswana, South Africa, Kenya, and Uganda. Chibuku was introduced in Zambia by Max Henriks via the Henriks Syndicate Limited in 1955, which industrialized the brewing process, adopting from the traditional brewing methods. Chibuku became commercially available in Zimbabwe in the 1960s and also in Malawi somewhere in that time frame through Lonro non-milling subsidiaries. The blurred origins are unsurprising, as at some point 3 Southern African countries were practically one country under a federation government of Northern Rhodesia, Southern Rhodesia, and Nyasaland. Small wonder the countries still share a large number of similarities in culture and socio-economics. If you're having coffee with me, I'll tell you that when Chibuku's brand of opaque brew was introduced to target African laborers who were not allowed to drink lager beers and spirit liquor due to the segregation laws of the time. It was mostly served in council beer halls that were found in townships and reserve areas as a way of monitoring and controlling behavior, as well as raising funds for the municipal authorities. Towards pre-independent Zimbabwe, only the affluent and educated African could purchase bottled beers and whiskey, but only from designated pubs and hotels. While this segregation wasn't as pronounced as the apartheid in our southern neighbor, still the sign "right of admission reserved" served a sinister purpose. With independence came freedom to do things that were previously out of reach. It is unsurprising people didn't quite want to drink the opaque brew that was forced onto them, and those who could afford it picked up more sophisticated palates. Chibuku didn't disappear, but instead rebranded to become a cheap alternative for those who could not afford the pricier bottled alcohol. In Zimbabwe, Chibuku launched a Chibuku Scud, which according to urban legend is named after its resemblance to the Scud missile. If you're having coffee with me, I'll tell you that in the more recent times, which is relative compared to the historical journey I just took you through, Delta introduced a more refined version, smoother and carbonated version of Chibuku, known as Super Chibuku. Affordable and minus the gritty texture that made it seem designed for people with industrial grade sieves in their throats to filter out sediments common with every sip of the Scud brew. Chibuku Super blends well with milk, ice cream, and other additives into a smoothie sometimes referred to as elephant yogurt. If you're having coffee with me, I'll tell you that Delta has also introduced various flavors to the Super Chibuku, which include banana, pineapple, and ginger. If you're having coffee with me, I'll tell you that the flavors are nice, but the public doesn't seem quite convinced, which is unsurprising because they still haven't shaken off the label that is something you drink when you can't afford anything else. I know people who swear they would never be caught dead drinking Chibuku because it would ruin their image. If I was head of the marketing team, I'd probably find a way to push the message that it's something you can choose to enjoy regardless of your situation politically. Still waiting for January to end and so staying in my lane, but I promise you I still occasionally enjoy a super chibuku, and not just because it's the only thing in the fridge besides vegetables and a couple of slices of polony. If you're having coffee with me, I tell you that might as well as drown our sorrows. The leader of the popular opposition party announced he was quitting in a 13-page document that said a lot without actually saying anything. What about the elections? What about the MPs who got elected? What about the free falling economy? What about this? What about that? But as someone else pointed out, if one thinks they're better at changing the country, one can stand up for it instead of dissecting what somebody else should have done differently. Meanwhile, the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission chairperson, Justice Priscilla Chigumba, has had her term renewed for another 6 years by the president. Looks like she did great work in the past elections and will be there to preside over the next elections. Let me have another sip of my super chibuku. What's going on in your neck of the woods?